Welcome to the Voice of Mongolia podcast in English. Today I'm your host, Bill Gun, and we have a really special guest today. He's from Israel, a freelance photographer called Asher Svidensky. He's also a film director, worked with big organizations such as the National Geographic, UNICEF, BBC, and have given lectures at Oxford and other TED Talks and many other works. It's really interesting to see you here, and welcome. Nice to see you here, and tell us about your recent works, and if there anything that I didn't properly introduce, please.
Oh, you did quite a swell job. Thank you so much for having me, of course. In terms of other works that I did, I've done lectures, films, photography projects, and it's quite amazing to be here talking about it, as most of my current career, both of them, both as a photographer and as a filmmaker, started here in Mongolia. So it's quite a refreshing and fun thing to talk about and share about here.
So you started your filming here, the photography?
Well, in a sense, right? So I started my work as a photographer, or my experience, my real experience as a photographer, when I was a military photographer for about 3 years. And then I've been working as a photographer since 2009 until today. And in the last 4 years, I also started venturing again into filmmaking. Which I could say, I started in high school doing a few films, but it doesn't really count. The work that I got to work here, both with different NGOs and companies, has been really something that I took to heart and grew through as I was going into filmmaking as well.
Tell us about your Mongolian works, recent works. What's going on? What's your latest work?
My latest work in Mongolia, well, it's been a mixture. I got to work with the Nature Conservancy, who has just signed a 15 years project here in Mongolian government, with the Mongolian government, in nature conservancy and establishing of protected areas. I got to work on 3 short films in different parts of Mongolia, from Khov, Terelj, and Khostai. Three different short films, which was really fun, about the idea of conservation in Mongolia. We worked with a beautiful person named Lojdo in Mukhakan Sum in West Mongolia and Khov, who had a beautiful story of how he transitioned from being a hunter, somebody who previously used to go to mountains and look for wild game, whether that be argali or different animals, to dedicating the rest of his life as an elderly protecting the animals and training local rangers. And it was this beautiful short story that we built together.
Hunter turned ranger.
Yes, Hunter turned ranger, which is out now on YouTube through the Nature Conservancy
It's
channels.
on the YouTube, right?
Yes, there's also, if somebody's interested to see it in Mongolian, with Mongolian subtitles, there's a secondary version of it within the Nature Conservancy Mongolia on Facebook. So if you want to play between the two options,
and the YouTube,
you can see it as well.
Yeah, I saw it on YouTube. I think I'll share it on the Facebook with the subtitles. I saw it, and there's another one like Changing Skies. It's about air pollution in Mongolia. It's very sensitive topic in here. Yeah,
Changing Skies is a film I did during basically the end of COVID with the organization called People in Need and a UNICEF office. UNDP office, I'm sorry. Where we did a relatively interesting film mixing both video art and interviews with local activists here in Mongolia, dealing with the topic of climate change, of air pollution. And what I loved about this film is the fact that it's very honest, it's very straightforward, and it's also not a propaganda film. Meaning that we made sure we put a lot of effort into showing interviews both with people against or activists who are trying to make a change, alongside interviews with people who kind of justify the problems, right? There's a lot of talk in Mongolia about something called heat-only boilers, who is a system where you burn coal or wood.
Heat-only boiler?
Heat-only boiler, yes. And the Mongolian government is actually actively shutting them down right now, which is a good thing overall in terms of air pollution. But because they basically burn coal to heat up waters for people who are not connected to the central heating. But you have a lot of those places who are the only heating source for hospitals or for more important facilities. So we made sure within the films, for example, to have a short interview with a person who works in the heat-only boiler to kind of showcase how the issue is a bit more sensitive and complex than straight up, this is bad, this is good, and moving forward.
It's for the heating. Without the heat, it will be freezing.
Especially in Mongolia. But I think that's a lot of what storytelling is. It's not about, oh, we want to show something or we want to explain something. It's about using storytelling, using complex styles of storytelling.
Yeah, it was powerful, man.
Exactly, and it's a good way to influence people. Not influence in terms of, we want them to think this way and let's tell them what they need to feel, but to showing them the case, showing them the problem, showing them the issues, and having them through the story, through the art, make their own conclusion, make their own opinion on the matter.
Yeah, it's about bringing to the public and raising awareness from my side.
Right, because people can't really have an opinion on something if they don't understand it. And I think that's a beautiful work that's done by different UN branches and NGOs here, trying to get people to understand the issue rather than how they're supposed to feel about it.
Yeah, it's exactly the right topic, I think, for activists to explore. And in Mongolia, it's really important from my experience. So coming here, what was your goal first? Your first goal?
What do you mean coming here to the studio?
The goal. Now, like in Mongolia. Is it traveling? Is it with the photography, or do you have a lot of purposes, I guess, yeah?
Well, the first time I got to Mongolia was in 2012 and did a very quick backpacking trip to Khovsko. Nothing too complex.
Just a trip, traveling?
Yeah, I just finished the army and I was included in a program where I went to do my tour guiding license. And I always wanted to tour guide and travel in the world, so Mongolia was kind of like my window of opportunity to go do it.
What tour guiding?
A tour guiding license.
Tour guiding.
Yeah, back in Israel.
Okay.
And then it was a very quick trip and time passed and I finished the military service. And I got to a point where I didn't like the way my life was going. I got to a point where I was doing commercial shoots, studio photographs, stuff like this, and it wasn't interesting for me.
Okay.
And in my attempt to kind of recourse my life and find a better occupation or better lifestyle for me, I decided to pretty much sell everything I owned at the time.
Wow.
And bought a one-way ticket to Asia. And Mongolia was one of the main countries I wanted to travel to.
Wow.
And I came here with the idea of, I'm not sure what I want to do, I'm not sure what I want to explore, but I want to get better and I want to build myself a path where I can use travel and cultural photography as a way to survive, as a way to make a living.
Wow.
And that journey in 2013, which was my second visit here, has been lasting till now. And it led me to
11 years.
Yeah, over a decade.
Wow.
And it's been a beautiful trip because I got to learn a lot about cultural photography, about storytelling. And even though I started here in Mongolia and I kind of learned here the value of understanding stories and creating photography projects rather than beautiful images. And that journey took me for different places around the world, from Mongolia, it started, to the Amazon forest, to China, to Argentina, to Ethiopia.
Wow.
And the common thread that I learned here was the importance of not creating beautiful images, but telling stories. And that a lesson I learned here, which was just an amazing experience.
Yeah, you can see his works on the websites, and he has an exhibition, right? You have an exhibition in here.
Just concluded one, yeah. We did a short exhibition in a gallery called Red Gear with the Art Council of Mongolia and Bazorig Foundation. And this was a project I've been working on for the last decade called Successors, where we explored how different cultures and traditions are being passed down from generation to generation, focusing on young kids learning to become eagle hunters, shamans, gauchos, Taiyang dancers. Wow. And that exhibition was kind of a taste from that project, which we did here in Mongolia, and I hope maybe in the future we'll do it again.
That's great. It's great, man. How old were you coming here, though?
My first trip, I was 22.
22. Well, yeah. At what time, what age you made your decision?
To do what?
To pursue selling everything, that major decision that you had?
Oh, well, it depends. So at the age of 22, I just finished the army. I was away outside of the army for about 6 months, 8 months. And that was the time frame where I decided I knew I wanted to deal with photography. I knew I loved the idea of very interactive style photography, which I learned during my military service. And it was at that age that I decided to basically shift and focus on trying to turn my career from just doing studio photography, which was the natural progression, into storytelling, into creating series of images, short films and stuff like that.
For me, I'm in my 20s. And what was your decision, though? Like, I'm kind of making a major decision also by myself. And I think I have to also make another major decision. at what age you were that when you made your decision though? Is it in your 30s or in your 20s?
Oh, that's a bit of I guess the simple answer is that
Like
for me,
maybe young listeners in their 20s, you know, when they're trying to make a major decision.
Well, I think it's a two-part answer, right? The main one for me, a lot of what I do today is derivative from my father.
Oh, okay.
The reason I love traveling, the reason I love storytelling, the reason I love art is all because of my father kind of being a manifestation of it and inheriting it to me. So when it came to me starting my adult life, which is in Israel, it's after the army, usually around 21, 22. Most places around the world usually starts around 18. I was kind of groomed into that world in general. I didn't know exactly what I would do, but I knew that I wanted my life to be around the idea of art and creating stories and visuals. And I remember I was sitting after the army and I told my dad the same thing I said now, like, you know, I'm doing this work, I'm working in studio, I have photography in my life, I have the idea of storytelling, but I don't enjoy it. Something is missing, something is lacking. And I had this idea roughly that I told him, I kind of want to go and travel and find different stories around the world and make that my career, make that my lifestyle. And sitting with my dad, he sat down with me and for about an hour, he told me what kind of an idiot I am, how it's a bad idea, I shouldn't do it, I should do something more corporate, more safe, more structured. And after an hour of him grilling me for my idea, he said, but if I was your age in your position, I wouldn't listen to anybody but myself, and I would do what I want to do.
At what time? At what age?
There was like almost 20, 21.
20.
And I think it's important idea where, regardless of what you want to do, if you want to be a creative, if you want to be a businessman, entrepreneur, or if you want to have a very different or very simple lifestyle, if you're not going to gamble on yourself, if you're not going to trust yourself to succeed, nobody else will. And that is obviously much more dominant in the art world, as you work in here might understand. But it is important in anything you do. It's not about getting approval from your parents or your teachers or your best friends. It's about you believing in yourself and just going with it and trusting you'll do the best you can.
Yes, for sure.
And I think that's how I got into what I do today. And I think if you said advice to young listeners, it's pretty much the best style of advice you can give.
That is a really important major decision that you made here to pursue this storytelling career. It's a really big risk. It's big courage, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, because I grew up with this, both my parents are actors, both my parents work in that field, for me it was natural to go in that direction. But regardless if it's natural or something you just want to be passionate about, it's always been about the decision, right? You have to go ahead and try. You have to go ahead and experiment.
Yes. Who's your photography inspirations? Do you have any inspirations? Like for a film director, who's your favorite film director?
Oh, that's a tricky one.
Or a photographer or something?
Well, for photography's sake, I used to think that photographers like Steve McCurry were like the gods, right? Like he photographed the famous photo called The Afghan Girl, which is one of the most iconic images in world history.
The eyes, right?
Yes.
The beautiful eyes.
But then once I got to India and I saw the kind of potential out there, he kind of lost a few points as far as I'm concerned. Photographers that I really like from the world of photography are photographers like Fan Ho, who is a Hong Kong photographer, one of the most talented photographers in history, I would say. Sebastian Salgado, who has a beautiful portfolio of inducting change through photography, through storytelling. And of course, Nick Brandt, one of my favorite photographers, was a wildlife photographer, but his work and his style is very much on the world of understanding the medium of photography and visual storytelling into the art of visual storytelling. Not just pretty images, but images that can enact change, that can enact an effect. And when it comes to films, it's a bit tricky because I don't necessarily have a favorite director, although I definitely love Tarantino films and so forth. But I do think that within cinema, there's such a huge array of films that can teach people a lot about what art is that are from different genres. Right? So for example, when I do workshops or I talk to different creators, I always recommend to really watch well two films. One is kind of an old film called The Never-Ending Story, who is based on the book. Beautiful film, talks exactly about what creativity and art can do for people around the world, especially for young individuals.
Old film.
It's a quite old film. I think it's from the 90s, which today would look a little...
What's the name of it?
Never-Ending Story.
Never-Ending Story. Okay.
Beautiful film, definitely worth a watch. The second film that I always recommend creatives or young individuals to watch today is called Cutie and the Boxer, which is a documentary made in the US. Beautiful film, which you follow the story of of an old Japanese artist who moved to America to pursue his art. And it's a beautiful film that shows kind of the dark side of being a creative or the dark side of being a storyteller. So those are the two films that I follow the most, and the photographers that influence me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you need that balance, right? Like a lot of people think, oh, being a cultural photographer or filmmaker, you get to travel around the world and see this country and that country and this culture.
It's easy, right?
It's definitely not easy, which I think people get, but there is a lot of work behind it. There's a lot of causes and consequences in pursuing this kind of lifestyle. And I think it's a beautiful thing for people to understand.
Lots of unexpected.
Sorry?
Lots of unexpected,
unexpected scenarios for sure. It's part of the job, but a lot of it is, I'm been married and I am married, and because of my work, sometimes I don't see my wife for 3-4 months. Right, I have to go and create a project. I have to go and work on a film, or it just sucks so much out of you. And I'm not saying that I'm sad about it or I don't want to do it anymore, but like any work, any lifestyle, there are pros and cons. Mm-hmm. And when you consider going in that direction, it's about how you deal with it and how you incorporate it into your existing lives.
That's great. It's like an adventure, like you're going on an adventure, you don't know. Everything is not guaranteed. Anything can happen at the nature.
Oh, for sure, but that's true to any kind of lifestyle. Right? You can work for 15 years in a bank and then get fired and you need to start scratch, right? I think it's part of accepting it in life. The question is, where are those risks? Mm-hmm. Where do you put them? Mm-hmm. And what kind of life you're going to have the more you avoid them. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's a very philosophical, it's very artistic way of living that you have. Yeah.
Well, it sounds nice. I don't know. Let's see how it actually goes to the test of time, right?
Okay, my next question is, what countries have you visited? Tell us about your traveling. You said you've been Amazon, you've been China, you've been what countries were there?
Well, it's a bit of a mixture, right? Overall, I haven't traveled to too many countries. I know a lot of cultural photographers and filmmakers, they love to say, oh, I've been to 90 countries or 110 or whatever number. It sounds nice and cool. Yeah. But because my work tends to be focused more on depth over amounts, I tend to visit the same country multiple times. Right? In Mongolia, I've been traveling and working since 2012. I've been traveling here 2-3 times a year. I've done projects in China, I've done projects in Ethiopia, in the Amazon. And the way I work is not about, I want to go to 50 states or 50 countries. I think my work led me to about 12.
What's the difference between the commercial photography and storytelling, adventure side of photography? What made you pursue not the glamorous of photography, like this media, kind of this branding, more into the natural side? What made you to make that decision? What's the different sides? You've been in both worlds, I guess.
That's a good question. For me, I don't think there's to say that commercial photography is not creative or storytelling. I think the differentiation has to be between creating pretty visuals and something with story to it. Because the word storytelling in commercial world or in artistic world has been thrown around quite a lot. But there is a lot of meaning and purpose to it when you match it into creatives. Right? So when I work on photography projects or films, the focusing on the story, meaning that you are focusing on the purpose of the film. What am I trying to say? What am I trying to convey to an audience, and what would be the best way to do so? A lot of photographers, filmmakers, and new creatives tend to confuse that with what would be the most cool shot I can take, or what's the most beautiful photo I can make. And I think what you're asking, and what I got drawn more into, is that when you focus on storytelling, you're focusing on the purpose of your creation. And when you focus on more commercial or visual images, you're focusing on this wow factor. And for me, because I grew up in a family of actors and storytellers, I was drawn into telling real interesting stories and using that as a way to convey interesting and important messages to both people locally, nationally, if that's Mongolia or Israel, where I'm from, or internationally, where you bring stories from different places to influence people globally.
Oh my God, that's really great. Thank you for promoting Mongolian culture for the world. It's really I'm I'm expressing my gratitude. So it's really a big job. I think you're doing a well job of promoting Mongolian tradition and culture. So it's.
Well, I think Mongolians do a great job in it as well. I mean, Mongolia is a beautiful and amazing place, and there's a bunch of local Mongolian creatives that I've met during my years here who are extremely talented, and there's so much more to explore here and to learn.
You can see his works at Asher Svidensky on Google, on websites.
Yeah, if you just go Svidensky.com, you can see my website, which is going through renovation, so depending on what time this airs, you'll see. You can check the YouTube, you can check on Google, there's a bunch of articles, and yeah.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Svidensky, and I hope you make a lot of great arts and documentation, storytelling, and I'm wishing you great luck, and I'll be watching you, enjoying your art, and thank you for coming here.
Sure thing. Thank you for having me. It's been an honor.
Thank you for tuning in to this wonderful episode with Svidensky, a wonderful photographer. Thank you for coming here and sharing your wonderful artwork with Mongolian people and to the world with globally recognized artwork is very wonderful. And I'm really overwhelmed by your artworks and by you, Mr. Svidensky. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure being here, and I hope more stories and more creators from Mongolia would get out to the international stage.
Okay, thank you.